Pow, pow, pow. All right, greetings from the Survival Pod. This is Freedom Phil out here in the wasteland. What's the topic? Tennessee's got it right when it comes to this whole thing of paternity testing, mandatory paternity testing, on-demand paternity testing. And what about the part where someone's been committing paternity fraud against you? The suits. And I agree with your ability to sue, but what's the problem with the entire situation? Well, I'll explain. Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. Let's get into it and turn up the video speed. I gotta be real about this. I think a lot of people saying, well, you can sue him for paternity fraud. That sounds great, but what if the bitch don't got no money? She's living off your money. Her money's long since gone. You know? There's a case ages ago where this chick had falsely accused this man of SA, and he was about to become a general. So not only the rank, the prestige, but obviously the money and how that could have improved his life, all fucking washed away. He never got that rank because he was stained by that, even though it was proven he was innocent. And he sued her, and he won. You know how much money he's gotten back from that? Basically nothing. It's like a lot of lawsuits. Sure, you could sue somebody. It ain't mean you're going to get any money from them. And you know why? Because a lot of people are broke. A lot of people who do this fuck shit, just like false accusers in presidential races or, you know, like the Kavanaugh situation. So you sue the person, but they ain't got no money. So that's one thing I think is kind of a little ironic about it. But the whole paternity testing thing is, you know, look, I think abortion is kind of an abhorrent thing. It's kind of disgusting. The reason that a lot of women would just feed us, eat us, delete us. You know, like just because you treat the baby like a fucking hangover. But I do understand there are some situations. Like when it comes to births from SA situations, only like way less than 1% of that happens. And so when it comes from abortions from that, probably less than 1%, maybe 2%. I don't know. But so we can't really use that excuse. Now, a lot of it's just the child will be inconvenient for your life. That's just being honest. And I think in some situations, let's say you're going to have a tard baby. I'm sorry, I just used the language like that, but let's be honest, that's what we're all thinking. You know, I could see why parents would be like, yep, we want to have a healthy baby. So they might be selective on that. Kind of a sad situation, but I get it. So if women can have all these myriads of birth control, and I don't think there's no excuse. If you don't know who the father is in this modern age of birth control, like you've got the implants, the morning after pill, and sometimes some people have some reactions to certain things, but let's be honest, the vast majority don't. So I don't want to hear your lying, statistical, inaccurate arguments in the chats. I don't give a shit. For the most part, the fact that women are still doing this same fuck shit slut behavior, or it's all like, I don't know who the father is. Like they won't say that, but they'll just point at some steady Eddie. I think it is at the birth, and it should not be a matter of choice. It should be mandatory. Like, I didn't consent to have a social security number. I didn't consent to paying taxes to all this shit. Just like that, you know, hey, at the birth of every child, there should be a paternity test. I think Tennessee's got this right. Now, you'll see women in conversations get all mad about this, and you should take a little kind of suspicious eye to that type of person. Even the men. What type of man would say, no, you don't need to know who the real father is? What type of simp-ass behavior is that? You know? And by the way, when you see conservatives, I get why Democrats want this, and I get why a lot of, you know, states want this, because they have to have it over 90% positive, we know who the father is, for Section 8 welfare benefits. To get that federal money, California had this law come up a number of years ago, and the reason the governor shot it down is because it would ruin their access to government funding for welfare benefits. So they're willing to throw innocent men on, and it is like a false conviction. It really is. You're forced to pay restitution for a crime you did not commit. And I'm sorry to refer to children like this, but if you're a father paying for a kid that is not your child, how is that any different than having to pay a lawsuit? Well, you see, they're children. Well, why the fuck can't we know who the father is from day one? And the fact that so many people get so angry about this says more about them than it says about the conversation. Women can't handle this conversation because, look, in Tennessee, they've already proven 1 out of 4 children, you are not the father. 1 out of 4. This isn't like 1 out of 50 1 out of 100, or even let's say 1 out of 20, 1 out of 4. I've heard over in the UK, can't spell cuck without UK, it's 1 out of 3. Now look, I'm begrudgingly for a woman's right to choose, and because I just think women are way too casual with yeetus, fetus, deletus. But I do understand the reasons. And I think there should be morning after pill dispensers, just like, the condom dispensers. They're in the bathrooms of the clubs. I think even in high schools. Shit, at this point, middle schools, with women getting frisky younger and younger. There should be morning after pills readily available. And you know why? Because I ought to be real about it. People be doing stupid shit when they're fucking and they don't, I didn't know. Bullshit. We live in a more sexualized age than ever. So, yeah, women need to have some control over what they do with their bodies. But it should be the expectation, if you're going to hold this man's feet to the fire. Let me tell you how fucked up this society is. There's cases where teachers have SA'd their male students. And by the way, if we're going to say that it's, underage, it's some horrible thing when a man, like say, a song by the Police, Don't Stand So Close to Me, she's attracted to the teacher. Oh, that's horrible. That man's a fucking pervert. That man's a fucking pedophile. But when women do it, people are like, well, he wanted it. Would you expect a female victim of that to have to pay back her rapist? Huh? Would you? Well, that's what happens to guys. The guy turns 18 and there's a backlog of child support from the woman who decided to keep the kid after she was the teacher that SA'd him. That is how fucked up our society is. It's all about the money. The government wants you paying child support. They don't even care if they've got the right guy. So if there's one thing that every man should be behind, if you're a man and you're against mandatory paternity testing, the hell is wrong with you? What type of man or what type of simp ass? I understand why Democrat dudes, it's called the Mactivists. They're acting like, oh, baby, I believe in whatever cause, whether it's, save the whales or environmental stuff, or I'm pro-feminist. Just saying whatever you got to do to get some of that fucking activist pussy. And women are hip to that game. They know that's what they'll even say it. A lot of the male feminists, these Democrat male feminists, are more toxic, more toxic than the conservative men. They'll actually, the sad part, what's funny about it is a lot of these Democrat men acting like super McSimpville, little cuck boys. They'll go out there and do all this shit, and then their girlfriends will be fucking some trad guy that she hates. I hate his politics. I hate this, but she wants that trad man cock. Why? Because that guy actually has the pheromones of a real man. Not all of them. And by the way, what about all those conservative Christians that are like, you can't dare ask my wife, questioning my wife that she cheated? That's why it has to be mandatory. And by the way, there's a lot of conservatives out there that are they're rhinos, except for they're basically Democrats. Like, if you're not supporting mandatory paternity checks, and by the way, women should have access to, contraceptives. Just like, why is it that men don't have better access to contraceptives? I remember a buddy of mine, he went into the Planned Parenthood and says, I want to get a vasectomy. He was 18 years old. They're like, well, you're too young to get that. You might change your mind. He literally told him. Now, by the way, my buddy was like kind of a wannabe, one of those white, a wigger. He was like one of those wannages. And then basically a white town. But you got to understand, rap music was like the thing. He heard Dr. Dre's whatever album it was, and he's like, it changed my life. And he had like homemade tattoos and all that shit. He's highly successful at being a survivalist. I learned a lot of techniques from him. But, he partly had to become a good fisherman hunter because his deadbeat mom, who got $1,000 or more per month, would Peggy Bundy that money. She'd go to bingo and piss it away, and she would spend all the money on like McDonald's. He could smell it on her breath. And then they didn't even have money for ramen noodles in the house. So part of the way he was is purely out of survival. But he's like, look, I'm not going to be a decent father. I'm not going to be this. I'm not going to be that. If I have kids, I'm going to just be a deadbeat. And they're like, oh, you'll think change different. He's like, you watch. Turned out he had kids, and he ended up faking crazy at 30. Not like the crown jewel guy that did it at 18. At 30, and the $50 a month he had to pay to child support, he didn't get away with it. He had 2 kids, and he's a good father. He's a decent, he teaches his kids good things and he's pretty solid, but he is not a good provider. Now, he went into Planned Parenthood and said, I want to get a vasectomy. And they said no. Do you think they said the same thing to a bunch of women who came in here? I need an abortion. I need the IUD. I need this. Why the hell would they tell a man who says, I don't want to have kids and I'm going to be irresponsible? You can't have equal access. The only option guys really have, like people talk about condoms, but let's be real. Condoms rob the feel. You want to have boring sex? She'll get off 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And you're sitting there fucking plowing her away thinking, are we there yet? The only option men are really given is a vasectomy. You know? Well, what about abstinence? That's like saying I want to go to France, but they're like, oh yeah, but you can't go there. No, men don't get given options. We get responsibilities. And at the very least, if you're going to try to hold men's feet to the fire, because some guys are fuck ups. Some guys be spreading their seed like a rainbird sprinkler. Like, fuck that guy. That guy needs to be forced to be sterilized. And I ain't cutting his nuts off. That's just a vasectomy. That guy's going to be irresponsible if his dick. He can have as much sex as he wants. Catch AIDS, do whatever. But like that guy, at a certain point, you need to hold the guy's feet to the fire. But the idea that you have men that have not fathered children and women just quietly live a lie. Sometimes I see some of these old bitches out there believe in Jesus. Believe in Jesus. Got to see the Heavenly Father. Honey, if you want to go see the Heavenly Father, why are you why are you going to the hospital? Some of them women were lying. Hell, I know a few women where it comes out. It'll come out if it ever gets some genetic testing. You are not the father. Old bitches be keeping those secrets for years, and then they get a little drunk and they let it slip. These young women, though, it's become so normal just to be that way, throwing your ass around on the down low. That I understand why you're fighting to prevent something like this from happening. It's in your best interest. It's in the government's best interest. The government would much rather have a steady Eddie, good educated man, good job, like whether it's college or a good trade. They'd rather have that man who makes a real ass wage paying way more in child support than the thug that actually knocked you up. It's in the government's best interest to fuck over men. They don't care where the money comes from, just as long as the money keeps coming. If you expect these young men to go out and work and keep society going, actually be part of a productive part of society, because I can tell you, I can live off $200 to $300 a month, but I'm kind of a minimalist extremist. If you expect these young men to go out and become a productive part of society, at least give them some dignity, where they at least at the birth of the child. This is why it cannot be a choice. Just like some taxation and things, you just gotta, because if you gave everybody the choice of paying taxes, well, then everybody would be trying to pull the moves like the 1%. Well, I don't have to pay anything because of this deduction, that deduction, blah, blah, blah. Like, fuck it. Ain't nobody paying taxes. In the same way, if you give women the choice of whether you get to get a maternity test, why is it a woman's choice? If it's a man's responsibility to pay for the child that he fathered, why is it a woman's choice of whether he needs to be told whether it's his kid or not? It shouldn't be anybody's choice. I don't even want a man it should be, here, we're doing genetic testing. Okay, so we see that, yes, this is the father. No, that's not the father. And you know what that solves? A bunch of court cases and bullshit down the road. You know what it also solves? If your father has some genetic disease, you'll know that kid might get it too. It's better. Some of these diseases are much more treatable if you know from when they're young. We have better treatments than we did back when he was younger. You might know some heritage, and you know what's fucked up? People do those 23andMe's, and it turns out there was this case where there was a sperm bank, and this guy was just using his material. He'd have all these pictures of all these other guys, kind of looked to the same brown skin or whatever, bright white or whatever, and it was all just his material. And the only reason he ever got caught is because people were doing this genetic testing, where am I from, 23andMe, and it turned out a whole lot of people had a whole lot of relatives And they were all his kids. Now he got taken to task for that. That was fraud. He committed a crime against all those women, and they were right to take him to task for that. So why is it that we see so many women out there defending women who commit fraud against men? The government that commits fraud against men. Because a lot of women, they happen to either they know somebody that did it or they did it themselves. Numbers don't lie. One out of 4 in Tennessee. 1 out of 4 children, you are not the father. UK, it's something like 1 out of 3. They're a little more, down with the crazy behavior. If you're actually a conservative, because I understand exactly why Democrats support keeping men in the dark, because they don't care where the money comes from. But if you're a conservative and you actually talk about supporting family values, I don't care whether you're religious or not, good family values. If you're a man, I understand why a lot of women wouldn't support this. But if you're a man, and particularly if you're a conservative and you are against mandatory paternity testing, then you're just a fucking Democrat, like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Let's just cut the bullshit. Like, women have a myriad of options of ways to prevent being pregnant. The fact that, by the way, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you're a woman and you can't identify who the father is because you just don't remember, you should be immediately sterilized. That child should be taken away and you shouldn't be allowed to have any. You're so fucking stupid about it. You treat your coochie like a trash can. Just everybody throwing just full of shit. All these women always complain, I can't find a good man. I all attract is trash. It's because you got a trash can coochie. You're the one opening the door. It's your box. You're deciding what's getting put in it. Who's putting in it. Women, you have such a myriad of options to prevent all these problems from happening. If you're going to expect men to go out there and contribute to society, at the very least, we should have a few things of dignity. No one who are these our children. And you'll hear those tragic cases where a woman will live a lie her whole fucking life. And then the family will have some disease. They'll think they're in a happy family. I remember hearing about this guy. He had 3 kids with this bitch. I gotta say, woman, what? She was a bitch. She was a hoe. All 3 of his kids weren't his. All 3 of them. And the only reason he found out is because when it came to somebody had some sickness or something and they wanted to see they were compatible, if it would work out, for some donation of tissue or some sort. And he got the test and it turns out, you're not the father. Now, I'm going to be real about this. We've had this technology since the 80s. So it's been over 30 years. It's been 3 fucking decades. Where we could have known you are or are not the father. There's absolutely no excuse in the modern age why that isn't done from day one. And the only reason why is we don't want to hurt the feelings of women and the government wants you to keep on paying. They'd rather some man get screwed who's a good, decent guy. And that's what should really get you thinking. They'd rather screw over a good man who is the exact type of person you want to have a family than get less money from some guy who's in and out of jail. But you got to understand, he had that fucking magic dongle. Ladies, I get it. He's got the looks. He's cut. I mean, what else did he got to do than pump weights and, have anal sex in prison? He comes out and he's swinging like a Rojo Jones. He's got a summer sausage down there and look at that magic penis. And there's just something about that guy, that raw, fucking feral man that turns you on. But then when you get knocked up, oh shit, who got to pay for this? And you try to stick that on some steady Eddie, like they used to say, alpha fucks, beta bucks. These days, you got these dating apps, and these women be out there basically being a fleshlight, a human fleshlight for a bunch of Chad and Tyrones, the Thundercock brothers. Or as Aaron Clary would say, T-Rash. The legend of T-Rash. By the way, if you ever listen to that story that he did on that, it's fucking hilarious. But yeah, you're basically part of a harem, online harem. And then down the road, I need to find a real man. After you've been run through, ride the cock carousel. I'm sorry, but at the very least, men should from day one know you are the father or you're not the father. Otherwise, stop expecting men to do shit for this society. Because you have made the cost of living so damn atrocious. You know, I can live off $200 to $300 a month. I'm a wastelander. I'm a woodsman. You know, I can live off next to nothing. I'm a prime example. If I want to and I drive truck or I do a job, I retain most of my income. I am literally the answer to poverty. And I look at how guys, just to keep families happy, throw away the best years of their life. And throw it away for cars and crap just to keep Honey Poo happy. Interest payments. The bagel boys got to make their money. Government's got to make their money. And, you know, it used to be maybe you could be like Al Bundy, where you could work a normal job and pay for a house. And your wife, even though you both don't even really like each other, you could make it somehow make it work. Like, fuck, that'd be the dream. For a lot of guys these days, that'd be the dream. Even though this isn't perfect, my wife still wants to fuck. How many guys are in dead relationships? At the very least, if you're going to ask a guy to make that fucking deal, that horrible deal called marriage, because marriage is so out of touch, so out of date. At the very least, can you guarantee they're his kids? And honestly, if she was cheating on his ass and she's like, they're his, and it turns out they're not, that should be grounds for a favorable divorce in his favor. Because the whole idea of marriage is you're going to both come together and make this work. I don't care whether you're religious or not. And hey, look, maybe have a contract that says we're both in open relationships. Put it in paper. But by the way, if you got to put all this shit in paper, here's a thought for you. If you got to put all that shit in paper, is this really something you want to save? No, we need men to keep society going. We need men to innovate and do things how we got to this point today. And instead of actually giving them some form of dignity, respect, or anything, we just expect them to take a shittier deal every day. So that's, you know, I look at it and say, at the very least, ladies, if you like, I'm glad you have all these birth control options. And I do think a woman should have the right to choose, even though a lot of women, the reason you're having an abortion isn't for a good reason. It's like a hangover. Can you just take a pill? Can you just suck this problem out of me? Not because most abortions are just merely you're an inconvenience. Now, if we can have that situation for women, can we at very least have paternity test to make sure the men are the fathers? And if that's a bridge too far, then you've kind of just right there, you need to understand that is why guys are checking out. That's why guys are going and doing what I'm doing more and more. Because we're looking at life and we're saying, fuck this, I want something better for me. I saw the way my father was treated. I saw the way my grandfather was treated. I saw my buddy down the road. I saw somebody's friend's dad get that raw deal. Fuck that, not me. That's what I realized. I saw the way the world was going back in the late 80s, early 90s, and I started just asking, well, wait a minute. Why is it this way? And what did I get in response? You're just a pussy. You're just a this. You're just a care. You're just... No, I'm just saying the equality that I was preached at, it was forced down my throat. Then when I expect a little equality to come a man's way, all they do is either bring shame, disrespect, even try to ruin your life. That shame shit ain't working no more. Dudes are walking away. And you know what? Every time you see a man, I understand why Democrats vote against men's rights, because it's in their best interest to keep you a slave. But when you see a conservative voting against it, you understand that that's a Democrat. That's just a conservative. It's a rhino, Republican name only. Paternity test should be at the birth of every child. Anyhow, peace.